Chosen one. This message has reached you at the perfect time. No accidents, no coincidences. This is divine timing at work. You are guided here because something extraordinary within you is stirring. A quiet knowing, a deep inner pull. You're starting to see beyond the surface, beyond tradition, beyond the systems that once defined your spiritual path. This isn't about abandoning faith. It's about evolving beyond limitation. Your awakening is not a rejection of God, but a return to a deeper, more personal connection with the divine. You are not crazy. You are not lost. You are awakening. And it goes far beyond the church system. There comes a moment in your spiritual journey when everything you once believed starts to shift. You begin to feel a disconnect from the very system that once nurtured your faith, the church. This isn't rebellion. This isn't pride. This is awakening. And if you're feeling this stirring within you, it's because you're being called to something deeper. You are the chosen one, and your awakening goes beyond the walls, rituals, and traditions of the church system. Let's explore this journey in 7 powerful chapters. Before we move forward, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. This is a message that every chosen one needs to hear. If you feel the truth of this message resonating within you, drop the number 77 in the comments. This isn't just a number, it's a powerful signal to the universe, showing that you are aligned with divine purpose and ready to step into your blessings. Only those who are truly chosen will stay until the very end, and for those who do, deeper truths will be unlocked. Your spiritual clarity will grow, and the blessings hidden within this message will become clear. Remember, this is wisdom that reveals itself over time. Revisit this video as many times as you need to harmonize your mind, body, and spirit with the truths being shared. Each time you return, you'll uncover something new, something profound that you may have missed before. Chapter 1. The Call Inside Your Soul. You've sat in pews, you've sung the songs, you've prayed the prayers, you've clapped when others clapped, bowed your head when they prayed, and listened as preachers spoke of faith, salvation, and obedience. You did all the right things, hoping it would bring you closer to God, hoping it would fill the empty space within. But still, something inside you says, there's more. This call is subtle at first, a gentle whisper, like a breeze brushing through your spirit. It's easy to ignore in the beginning, but over time, the whisper grows louder. It starts to stir your thoughts during quiet moments. It keeps you awake at night. It shows up in your questions, questions others might be too afraid to ask, questions that make you feel like maybe, just maybe, the truth is deeper than what you've been told. You begin to notice that your most profound spiritual experiences don't always happen in a building. They happen when you're alone, in silence, overwhelmed by the beauty of the stars, or in moments of deep pain, when the tears come faster than prayers, and all you can do is feel. Or in a conversation that awakens something in you, not with a pastor, but with a stranger or a child. You begin to see God everywhere, in everything, and when you try to speak about it, sometimes you're met with confusion or resistance. Some may tell you to get back in line or suggest you're straying from the path, but deep down, you know you're not straying. You're being guided, guided inward, guided upward, guided into truth. It's confusing at first, because you were taught to seek God only through structure, only through rituals, only through the church. But now, something inside you is awakening to the divine beyond those boundaries. Your soul is remembering what it always knew, that God is not confined to pulpits, pews, and performances. This isn't rebellion, it's recognition. Recognition of the sacred spark within you that's been waiting to be noticed. You start to feel more alive when you're away from the noise, when you're journaling, meditating, walking in nature, or just sitting in silence. You're not running from faith. You're running towards something real. You're not losing your beliefs. You're shedding what was never yours to begin with. You're not broken. You're breaking open. And in that breaking open, something beautiful begins. You begin to see that the divine is not found in performance, but in presence. Not in pressure, but in peace. You realize that spirituality isn't a script to follow. It's a relationship to nurture, a reality to embody, a truth to live. Your soul is calling, not to pull you away from God, but to pull you deeper into God, beyond fear, beyond control, beyond dogma, beyond. Chapter 2. Religion versus Relationship. The Church often teaches about God through systems, doctrines, and authority structures. It creates a framework, sermons, services, hierarchies, rules, and rituals. For many, this structure offers safety, belonging, and a sense of purpose, especially in the early stages of spiritual growth. But when the soul begins to awaken, something shifts. You begin to feel confined by the very walls that once sheltered you. Your spirit starts to whisper a sacred truth. God is not bound by buildings or denominations. God cannot be reduced to a set of traditions. The infinite cannot be contained by finite systems. You start to notice that many people know about God, but very few seem to know God. They've memorized verses but never felt the fire. They've followed the routine, but the depth is missing. And this realization doesn't fill you with pride. It fills you with longing. You begin to crave something more, not in performance but in presence, not in repetition but in revelation. You don't just want to study God, you want to walk with God, talk with God, sit in silence with God. You want to feel the divine in your breath, in your tears, in your decisions, in the ordinary moments of life. You begin to seek direct connection, not just weekly messages. You crave intimacy, not just theology. The veil between you and the divine starts to tear, not through rebellion, but through reverence. You realize that the presence you once chased in church buildings has always been within you. You begin to understand what the mystics and sages spoke of, that heaven isn't only a place you go to, it's a state you awaken to. This is when everything changes. You become less interested in pleasing people and more devoted to listening to the voice within. You stop measuring your spiritual life by how often you attend a service, and instead you measure it by how deeply you feel aligned with truth, love, and purpose. You begin to see prayer, not as obligation, but as conversation. Scripture becomes less about doctrine and more about dialogue between your soul and the source. In these quiet, sacred moments, you feel the presence of God more vividly than in any sermon or ritual. It's not about following rules anymore. It's about living in a state of constant connection, open to God's guidance at every turn. And it's not that you dishonor religion. You just stop making it your ceiling. You recognize that it may have been your foundation, but your relationship with God is what builds the house. You're no longer content with being told about God. You want to experience God. Personally, directly, deeply, every day, everywhere. Because for the awakened soul, religion might be the path that introduced you to God, but relationship is the path that brings you home. Chapter 3. Breaking the Mental Chains. Many are afraid to question the system. Fear of hell, fear of judgment, fear of being called rebellious. It's the quiet weight that many carry, even if they don't fully realize it. It's a quiet voice that whispers, if you step outside this box, you're lost. It's the idea that if you stray from the norms, you'll be condemned, discarded, or misunderstood. And for a long time, this fear holds you captive. But chosen ones reach a point where fear can't hold them anymore. They reach a threshold where the internal call to truth outweighs the external pressures of conformity. They no longer fear hell in the same way, because they realize that hell is not a place to go to. It's a state of mind, a place created by separation from love and truth. You begin to break free from the guilt-based teachings that kept you small. You stop believing that you need to be perfect to be loved by God. You stop feeling that every misstep, every failure, is a reason to turn away from the divine. Instead, you start to understand that imperfection is part of being human, and God's love is unconditional, always ready to embrace you, no matter where you've been or what you've done. You let go of the idea that you can only be spiritual if you follow religious protocols, if you check off all the boxes of right belief and behavior. Slowly but surely, you start to realize that spirituality is not about following rules. It's about being authentically connected to your higher self, to the divine within and around you. You stop seeing spirituality as a performance for others and start seeing it as a personal, intimate journey of discovery. The weight of shame that once kept you bound to the doctrines of fear begins to lift. You start to see that the chains that once bound you were never truly of God, but of human-made. You were created to walk in freedom and truth. You begin to question everything, not out of rebellion, but out of a desire for clarity. The questions that once filled you with guilt now become the key to your freedom. Why must I live in fear to connect with God? Why must I be ashamed of my mistakes when they are part of my growth? Why does spirituality feel like a set of rules and not a living relationship? These questions propel you forward, pushing you to break through the mental chains that have bound your soul for so long. Your awakening means that the truth is no longer confined to the scriptures, the doctrines, or the authority figures you once followed. The truth is within you. It has always been within you, waiting to be uncovered, waiting to be embraced. You start to realize that the divine is not limited by anything, including man-made systems. Your relationship with God is not something anyone can define for you. It's a personal, ever-evolving experience that goes beyond rituals, beyond dogma, and beyond fear. As you break free, you start to feel lighter, freer, more alive, no longer held back by the mental chains that once kept you trapped. You begin to walk in the fullness of your truth and in the fullness of God's love, which was always meant for you. You start to see yourself as worthy, as powerful, as free. You realize that you are not bound by the past, by tradition, or by fear. You were created for freedom. You were created to walk in truth. You were created to live in the fullness of your divine purpose. This is what breaking the chains is about. This is your awakening. Chapter 4. The Wilderness Season. Every chosen one faces a wilderness, a season of isolation, confusion, and searching. It's a place where the familiar fades and the future feels uncertain. You may feel like you're walking alone, even though you're surrounded by people. Church friends may not understand you. They may question your choices, your growing desire to break free from the norms you once followed. Even your family might worry about your direction, unsure of why you're straying from the path they once believed was the only way. But this wilderness isn't punishment, it's preparation. In this season, everything that once felt stable or secure is stripped away. The answers you once relied on seem distant, like whispers in a storm. The things that gave you comfort, routines, traditions, familiar faces, now seem hollow. The loud voices of society, of religion, of expectation begin to fade into silence. And in this silence, you are left with yourself. You are left with God. In the stillness of the wilderness, you learn to hear God for yourself. No longer is God just a voice in the sermon, the hymn, or the scripture. Now you must learn to listen for God in your own heart, in your own thoughts, in the quiet moments where the world falls away. You start to realize that God speaks to you uniquely. that your connection is deeply personal. It's not mediated by a pulpit, a book, or a priest. It's direct. It's intimate. The wilderness also brings loneliness, a feeling that you don't belong, that no one truly understands the journey you're on. You may question your decisions, your path, and even your faith. But in this loneliness, something beautiful happens. You discover who you really are, without the distractions, the opinions, and the expectations of others. You're forced to confront your deepest fears, your truest desires, and your most authentic self. The masks you once wore begin to fall away. You stop living for the approval of others, and you begin to live for yourself, for the version of you that God always intended. This is where the real transformation begins. In the wilderness, you're not just surviving, you're being shaped. The fire that once felt like it was burning you is now refining you. The confusion and the isolation serve a purpose. They teach you resilience, patience, and trust. You learn that you are stronger than you ever thought. You realize that you can endure and even thrive in the midst of uncertainty. But the wilderness is not the end. It's the beginning of your transformation. It's the moment when the old version of you dies and the new version of you begins to rise. It's where your soul begins to stretch and grow, where your spirit is renewed. You are being prepared for something greater than you can imagine. The wilderness is where your purpose is forged. It's where you begin to understand your true calling, your unique gift, and your divine mission. And though it may feel like you're wandering in the dark, remember this: the wilderness isn't the absence of God. It's where you come to know God in ways you never could. The wilderness is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of something beautiful, something powerful, something divinely orchestrated. So take heart. For every season of wilderness will eventually lead you into the fullness of your calling. You are being transformed, step by step, into who you were always meant to be. Chapter 5. The Rise of Inner Authority. When you stop depending on external systems for validation, something powerful happens. Your inner authority begins to rise. You no longer rely on someone else's interpretation of truth to guide your path. The answers you've sought have always been within you. For years, you may have looked to leaders and religious systems to tell you what's right and wrong. But as you awaken, you realize that your connection to the divine is direct, not mediated by anyone else's authority. You no longer need permission to be who you truly are. Instead, you stand in recognition of your divine worth and inner guidance. You realize that the same spirit that guided prophets and saints is within you. The same force that spoke through Moses, Jesus, and the mystics is alive in your heart, waiting to guide you toward your highest purpose. This realization shifts your perspective. You're not separate from those who walked in divine power. You are one with them, carrying the same divine spark. You begin to trust your intuition more deeply. The little nudges and gut feelings become the voice of your inner wisdom, guiding you toward alignment with your highest good. Your discernment sharpens, and you find clarity, knowing which paths to take and which to avoid, all because of an inner knowing that can no longer be ignored. Ancient texts and holy books take on new meaning. You read them with new eyes, not as doctrines imposed by others, but as personal revelations waiting to be uncovered. Wisdom flows freely from within. You realize that God's voice is not just in scriptures, but in every moment, experience, and breath. You begin to understand that you are your own sanctuary, no longer seeking validation from others. Your sense of worth is defined by your inner guidance. You find peace in your own presence. God is not something you search for outside. You know that God is within you, and that your heart is the most sacred space. As your inner authority rises, You make decisions from a place of alignment with your soul. You trust your choices, knowing they come from divine wisdom. The fear of mistakes dissipates, and you realize every step is part of your journey. No longer concerned with others' judgment, you walk confidently, guided by your inner truth. Your inner authority is your greatest strength, the compass that guides you toward your destiny, the light that illuminates your path, and the voice that calls you back to your highest truth. You become your own sanctuary, not because you must be independent, but because you recognize the divine within you and embrace your personal connection to the source. No longer seeking validation from others, you find it within, in the love, wisdom, and truth that reside in your soul. Chapter 6. Reclaiming your divine identity. The church may have labeled you sinner, backslider, outcast. They may have told you that you were flawed, unworthy, or broken. These labels were meant to keep you small, to bind you to a narrative that defined you by your mistakes rather than your essence. But your awakening reminds you of the truth. You are divine by design. You were never meant to live in shame, guilt, or condemnation. Those labels were imposed by human systems of control, not by the divine. The truth is, you are far more than the mistakes of your past or the labels placed on you by others. You are not here to simply follow rules, to conform to rigid structures or limited expectations. You are here to embody light, to shine brightly in a world that needs your unique brilliance. Your true purpose goes beyond tradition. You were created to express the divine in ways only you can. You are a co-creator with the divine, a spiritual being in human form, and your existence is not a random occurrence. Every moment of your life is an opportunity to express the sacred power within you. This power is not external or distant. It resides within you, waiting to be activated. You carry this sacred power in your thoughts, words, and actions. Every choice you make, every word you speak, and every step you take is an expression of your divine identity. You are not separate from God. You are an expression of God. The divine flows through you as a current flows through a river. Your soul is an extension of the Creator's will, designed to manifest love, creativity. As you reclaim your divine identity, you begin to see the world through new eyes. The limitations you once believed were true begin to fade, and you realize the infinite possibilities that exist when you walk in alignment with your highest self. You no longer see yourself as separate or small. Instead, you see the vast, infinite potential within you waiting to be realized. The chains of guilt, shame, and self-doubt that once held you back begin to fall away. The truth of your divine nature becomes undeniable. You realize that you were never meant to be bound by the restrictions of religious systems or societal expectations. You are meant to soar, to rise, and to shine as the unique expression of the divine that you are. When you embrace your divine identity, you stop playing small. You stop seeking validation from external sources, because you recognize that you are already whole, already complete, already worthy. You are a powerful spiritual being, capable of creating and manifesting in the world with love and purpose. This reclamation is not about ego. It's about understanding your divine essence and living from that place of inner truth. It's about stepping into your power, knowing that you are a vessel for divine wisdom, love, and creativity. It's about honoring the sacred being you are and living authentically, without fear, doubt, or apology. You are not defined by your past, by what others think of you, or by the limitations of the world around you. You are defined by the truth of who you are, a divine being, a co-creator with God, here to live out your purpose in this world. You are whole, you are sacred, you are divine by design, you are an expression of God. This is the truth of your identity. This is the truth of who you are meant to be. Chapter 7. Becoming the living church. You don't need stained glass to shine. You don't need a pulpit to preach. Your life becomes the message. The way you live, love, and serve speaks louder than any sermon. The awakening you've experienced turns you into something sacred, a living church. You stop seeking validation from systems. You become the temple, the vessel where the divine dwells. Wherever you go, the presence of truth, love, and power flows through you. You're no longer defined by roles or rituals, but by the light you carry. You no longer wait for a Sunday to connect with the Spirit. You carry that connection into every moment. You serve not for recognition, but from compassion. You give without needing applause. You help because it's who you are, not because someone told you to. Your heart has awakened to the divine truth that every act of love is holy. Even the smallest unseen gestures, a comforting word, a silent prayer, a compassionate presence, become sacred offerings. You understand now that true worship is not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, consistent, and deeply rooted in love. You speak truth not from tradition, but from revelation. Your words no longer echo borrowed ideas. They are born from your own journey. You've wrestled with doubt, questioned deeply, and encountered the divine in the silence. Your truth is not memorized, it is embodied, and because of that, your voice carries weight. You don't need to shout to be heard. Truth carries its own vibration. You lead not by control, but by example. You walk your talk. You inspire others not by titles or positions, but by authenticity. People feel the difference. Your presence brings peace. Your steps bring clarity. And your story brings healing. You lead with humility, not superiority. With love, not fear. With grace, not force. Leaving the system wasn't the end. It was the beginning. You didn't just walk away from religion. You walked into truth. You moved from performance to presence, from following rules to following spirit. And now you are that truth. You embody what others are still searching for. You are no longer looking for the sacred. You have become the sacred. The divine lives in your hands, your heart, your breath. You are a sanctuary in motion, a light walking through the world. You don't need to convert others. Your life is the invitation. Your being is the sermon. This is what it means to become the living church. This is who you are now, not bound by walls but built by spirit, not led by fear but filled with love, not waiting for heaven but bringing heaven here. You are the living church.